When Hollywood approaches the forgiveness of sins, they really like to either focus on the Catholic practice of confession, mandatory for certain sins in a confessional box to a priest who tells the penitent to say certain prayers or do certain things as penance, or they go after the American evangelical practice of privately saying a prayer to Jesus for forgiveness and then having one's slate completely wiped clean. But did you know that Methodists also have a distinctive belief about confession? Well, we do. I'm Reverend Ian Collier, and this is 2 Minute Methodism. As one of the expressions of evangelical Christianity that most values the theology and practice of the historic church, it's not surprising that Methodists find ourselves somewhere in between those poles of Catholicism and American evangelicalism. As Methodists, one of our distinctive views is that when we think of sin, we don't think it's just that we have broken a law, but rather that we have fallen victim to an injury or a sort of spiritual illness that hobbles us in our growth towards becoming more like Christ. Confession for us is turning over our spirit to God's surgery, for God to bind up the break or cut out a growth. This is forgiveness. Now, for some people, this injury acquires a secondary infection, anxiety over our salvation. And while Methodists don't believe that you have to be absolved by a pastor in order to be forgiven by God, we still have a ritual for private confession and pardon, just for those situations where someone needs to hear the pastor speak forgiveness to them in the pastor's role as an official representative of Christ's body on earth, the church. But forgiveness is also only the beginning of salvation, not its end. Even though God forgives us freely after we confess, that's not all we have to do. Remember, that final goal is to become like Jesus, to be sanctified. After we get our spiritual surgery, we still need our spiritual PT. After confession, through God's grace, we work to become more like Jesus by imitating Christ, by making his example our second nature. For Methodists, we confess to be forgiven, and we are forgiven so that we can be spiritually healthy enough to grow into the likeness of God.